Join me in welcoming Chloe Abrahams, the filmmaker of The Taste of Mango. Welcome.
Hi.
I guess just to kick things off and sort of open up the Q&A, I wanted to hear a little bit about the origin story of this film. I'd love to just know, where did the impulse to make this film come from, and how was it made?
So I started making this film about five and a half years ago. I always knew that these stories needed to be told from my family. I'd grown up kind of hearing whispers and not really fully knowing the whole story, but knowing that there was something important, and feeling how much pain my mom had. And about 5.5, 6 years ago, my other grandmother passed away, and Nana, she was my last living grandparent, and I didn't have a relationship with her. And so I wanted to change that. I wanted to help my mom, and when I began, I thought I was going to fix everything, and it just became a long journey of realizing that, these things are not maybe able to be fixed, but we can start talking about them and try and figure them out. And so, I started filming with my family. I had no idea where it was going. It began really as something that was more focused on my grandma and reconnecting with her, and then over time it became more about my mum, and then very close to the end I realized that I was also a part of it, and
I think that it feels like there's something very open-ended about the film and its approach to storytelling, which makes sense given the fact that you were also kind of exploring and understanding the story as it was being made. And there's also really distinct editing choices that are being used to tell the story, especially the way that voiceover and image can kind of juxtapose one another, and we're trying to kind of arrive at a way to talk about the things that haven't been talked about before. I wonder if you could talk just a little bit about your editing choices and your approach to kind of telling the story through this form.
Well, I think it began as really an impulse to really not want to repeat the violence that any of us had been through, and I think there are a lot of films might use more violent imagery, or feel more violent, as in my opinion, which feels sensationalizing, or for a kind of impact in a way that I really wanted to avoid. And so I thought about how we could use images and sounds and music and to try and talk about it in a tender way, and in talking about kind of splitting the voiceover from the voices and images and pairing those, and a lot of the images, thinking about those more abstract images and close-up images, they were things that I was just filming spontaneously, not really thinking about the edit. And one of the editors I worked with put something together, and it felt like being inside my mind, because I would sit close to water and zoom into these shapes and just use this space as a reflection, and it felt like a great way to be able to give audience members as well a chance to be able to reflect and go inwards, or not have to sit with this heaviness.
Yeah, I think I really appreciate that idea of your approach to form as being a way of kind of taking care of your family's story, and I also felt that, you know, at least from the experience of watching it, that there's something very reparative about making the film with your family. And I think, so that's something I wanted to ask you. What was the experience of making this film like with your family? Did you see them as co-collaborators? What did you all like learn and experience as a family through making this?
Yeah, I wish my mum was here. She's been coming with me to some of the screenings, and she's so great at articulating her side of it. And she loved doing this with me. I didn't show her the cut for a while. I wanted it to be in a kind of a good place. But after a couple of years, I showed her the first cut, and from there we kind of, for a few years, I would show her various cuts, and we'd talk about it and think about, you know, how we were all being portrayed and what were the intentions, and what was, I mean, when I initially talked to her about the film, I think she thought it was going to be more of an expose or an investigative film. And when I showed it to her, she was a little disappointed because she wanted it to be more harsh on her stepfather, for her own reasons. But then she slowly kind of understood what I was doing. And in a Q&A recently, she said something that brought me to tears on stage. She said that, you know, talking about me, she said that I'm someone who feels a lot and thinks a lot, and before she never understood me. And I didn't feel like she understood me either. She'd kind of roll her eyes at me, or, you know, if I'm asking these deep questions. But she said through watching the film and through doing this, she came to understand more how I think, and that was really special. And then with my grandma, so I visited her a few times in Sri Lanka, and she came to London with us, and she was really excited to tell her story. She was way more natural in front of the camera from the beginning than my mom. My mom took a bit more time. And it was less of a kind of collaboration with her, but I had always intended to show her the full film, but really heartbreakingly, so just after we filmed the last scene where she said that she decided to leave, we applied for her to get a visa to live in the UK with us, but the Home Office rejected it. And then we got an appeal date, but that took a few months. And in that time, her health deteriorated, and sadly, she passed in March. And I had visited her a few times during that period, and it just didn't seem right to show her the film in that state. And I showed her parts of it, and I explained to her what was in the rest, and we talked about it, and she was very proud. But I couldn't. It didn't feel right to kind of put her through the emotional stress at that point in her life. But yeah.
I'm really sorry to hear about that. Sorry for your loss. I guess that makes me wonder. One of the questions I wanted to ask was about the ending of the film, which I found surprising. I was surprised that your grandmother left that man, and I wanted to know, were you surprised, and how did you choose this ending? And does the ending now also feel different to you?
Yeah, I went, even after knowing she had made that decision to leave, I really went back and forth for a long time about whether to include that in the film. I didn't want it to feel like everything was just tied up and happy, and because it's not, it's more complicated than that. Even with that decision, it would have been difficult for my mum to have her in the UK. But I think I'm now really glad that we did include it, because she didn't get to really leave. So this is giving her that opportunity that she wasn't able to have. And I was really surprised. I knew before I shot that before I went on that trip, I knew that she had left, but I was a bit skeptical. I wasn't sure, but there was something different in her, something lighter in her when I saw her, and she was just, we had a really long conversation on the beach that you only see just a little moment of it. But she was really kind of talking badly about her ex-husband, and it was really such a relief and such a surprise. I had kind of, at the beginning of making the film, I thought I'm definitely going to be able to change her really easily, and then it didn't happen. And then to see that something had changed, it was pretty incredible.
And I also think that that kind of movement from like darkness to lightness, which you describe, is I think a movement that happens a lot in your film. Like it's obviously dealing with very difficult and family traumas, but there's also a sense of lightness a lot of the time, and there's a kind of like really like shimmering quality to a lot of the images. And I also think about the score and the kind of the ethereal score, but it's also punctuated by country music. And I wanted to ask about that tone and those decisions, behind the choice to juxtapose the score with this country music, which is so surprising.
Yeah, well, I'll start with the lightness. I mean, this film, we have, although the film is about violence, in some ways it's also really about everything around that and how we live our lives despite that, and the joys in our everyday life. And my mom is just so bright and joyful, and she will do things like sing everywhere she is and take baths all the time, and she really takes care of herself and does her nails and her hair and her makeup, and she really takes pleasure in making herself feel good. And that, I just needed that to come across. And the country music, it's just such a natural part of our lives. I've grown up with this music because my mum did and my grandma did, and those are the songs that were playing on the radio when my grandma grew up in Sri Lanka, and it was, not grew up, when she was in her 20s, but, and I mean, I had heard these songs my whole life, but I think while I was filming, it was really the first times that I was listening to the lyrics. Like when my mum was taking a bath, first I knew I wanted to get a shot of her in the bath because she's always in the bath. And I was filming her in silence at first, and she was like, "It's too quiet, we need some music." So she put on the Kenny Rogers song, and I started crying because I hadn't really listened to the lyrics before, even though I had heard that song so many times, and how kind of also perfectly it fit with the narrative of the film. And the score is composed by my cousin, who also shares the same grandmother, and it's his first score. But I knew that it needed to be him, and we wanted it to be kind of in dialogue with the country music, and yeah, for it to all be uplifting in a way and to counteract what might have been heavy.
Yeah, I love hearing the kind of sense memory story of the music, and that was actually one of the questions I wanted to ask you. It was about sense memory and inheritance, and the title, "The Taste of Mango," because I think that feels like such a sense memory, especially like in diaspora, being taught to cut a mango, and what gets associated with the taste of mango. So I guess I know this is a film about inheritance, but can you say a little bit about how this is a film about inheritance through a title like The Taste of Mango?
Well, I think because I'd been like I think I feel like I've hit this point so many times, and I had been focusing on so many of the darker things that I inherited that I wanted to focus on something more positive and that we all shared that was not linked to anything difficult, that was just sweet and would make people's mouth water. And because it's such a strong memory for me, and my mouth's watering right now.
It is literally sweet. I want to open it up to the audience. Does anyone have any questions for Chloe? Yes, let me bring the microphone over to you.
Hello. So this film was filmed with a Handycam, and the use of the Handycam, it seems as if it made things very personal and extremely intense, with a lot of close-up shots, and the use of the Handycam allowed the people that are being filmed in the movie to come across more naturally, I guess, and less intimidating. And is that one reason why the Handycam was used? And also, the taste of mango, I really had no idea that this was going to be about these topics, so it did draw me in to see the movie, so it did work.
Thank you, yeah. Yes, so I shot most of it on a HD Handycam, and at first it was because I had no funding. I just got the cheapest camera that I could. And at first I was actually a little embarrassed of it. I didn't think I would be using any of the material in the film. I was just kind of shooting at home and thinking of it more as research or practicing. And then when we started putting things together, I was kind of became slowly convinced by some of the responses that it helped with the film's intimacy, as you said, and it also really helped my mum to feel so comfortable, and it was so easy, and I could carry it around with me, and it was able to be in these spaces that I probably wouldn't have been able to film if I had had any other kind of camera. Yeah.
Any other questions? Yes.
Hello, you did a great job, first of all. Your mom should be, and your grandmother, wherever she is, should be proud of you. What really, I have two questions for you. One of them is, to what extent, and I think the country western music has a lot to do with it, did you feel or were conscious of, or did you discuss amongst yourselves the effects of being part of a diaspora that went to another country that was actually emanating a different, kind of cultural artifact, and then planting it in Sri Lanka, where you're listening to country western music with all these memories that clearly rang, true to your grandmother and your mother. Would that have happened had you been born, raised, and never had left Sri Lanka, the three of you? In other words, had you not gone to England, or had been exposed to some, American music, even in Sri Lanka, would this movie had turned out differently? Because I know, being half Mexican myself, it's difficult to get a hold of. It's hard to broach the personal side of people from older generations and from traditional cultural experiences like that.
Thank you. Yeah, that's a really difficult question to answer, because I think I would be a completely different person, and I'm not sure I would even be a filmmaker. So who knows if this film would even get made. And just thinking about, I am not really sure. I'm sorry, I'm struggling to find an answer to that. Will you let me think about it and we can chat after?
Any other questions? Yes.
Hello. So first, I just think it's very brave of you to share this story, and thank you. And I think, especially the concept of shame in culture, like my culture as well, we hide those stories, keep it secret due to shame. So, and you can see that across all the generations that we just keep it secret. And, yeah, sorry, my voice is shaking. But where do you find the strength to share these stories? So, was it a difficult decision for you to share this because it's so intimate and personal? Yeah.
I think, and I don't know where, I think it must come from my mum. We both of us feel so open with sharing these things, and I think we've, although I had definitely held things back and not shared everything in the past, I think that because my mum has been so open, I've just felt comfortable doing that since I was quite young. And I guess because we both do feel that it's not been easy for us, but it's been possible to do something like this. And I don't know where it comes from, but just being able to keep talking to the people around me and feeling supported in that way, yeah.
Any other questions? Yes. Hi. First, I just want to say it was exquisite. This film is exquisite, so thank you. And also that as someone who shares some of the stories and the generations of women in my family, I want you to know that this film made me feel free. I have two questions, and so the first is, I love the form you used of kind of the montage, and I'm curious who are your favorite filmmakers. I think the only filmmakers I've seen of this form is like Chantal Ackerman and Agnes Varda, but now I would just want to know who your inspirations are. And the second question is, do you have any future projects? Because I'm going to watch them.
Thank you so much. Well, I definitely love Chantal Ackerman and Agnes Varda so much. I feel like a lot of the filmmakers I love are really nothing like this style, like Abbas Kiarostami and Apichatpong, where I said the goal. So it's hard. And also, I got this question the other day, and I really struggled to answer because while I'm making films or work, I actually can't watch good cinema because my brain goes into kind of overdrive. So I end up watching really bad reality TV, and so I forgot all my references. I also work as an editor, and I'm working with other directors right now, and I really love doing that. I am beginning to think about my next project as a director, and hopefully it won't take another 5 years, but we'll see. Thank you so much. Thank you for staying, and